The American small town. Clear skies, rolling hills, but all this beauty is juxtaposed against a darkness.
Look at what just happened. It's because of people that...
And this darkness, it never rests. It's centuries old. It doesn't sleep. And even now, it's growing stronger. At first glance, the small-town life seems appealing to many. It's a more laid-back pace, and it's become synonymous with life in the nation's heartland. But if you dig just a little bit deeper, you might find it's not all it's cracked up to be. All around us in this town, you can see the clues, the literal signs. So what's going on? How did we get from weekend camping and fishing trips, charity auctions and bake sales, all the way to this?
What are you offended about?
Supporting the goddamn niggers around here. Oh my God.
It's not hard to figure out. Let's take a look. By the year 2016, America had grown tired of politics as usual. They were tired of the empty promises and the lack of action. The sensational media latched onto then presidential candidate Donald Trump and billed him as someone different. He was able to persuade voters that he would be able to run the country like a successful business. Many people didn't know the actual truth about Donald Trump until it was too late. And he certainly was different. During debates, he used childish insults and mockery to attack his opponents. Many leaked audio and video clips of him came out in the media, showing that, in truth, he was a racist, sexist bigot. However, his many supporters could not accept the new facts that they were being shown. The cognitive dissonance was too much for them, and therefore they rejected reality. Consider the fact that he was voted out of office in November of 2020. Yet again, cognitive dissonance won out. He refused to concede the election loss and rallied his supporters using claims of ballot fraud and election rigging. After being fed lies for 4 years, they had no choice but to go along with his lies. And he continued to rally them to the point where armed insurrectionists supporting him stormed the Capitol building and erected a gallows, threatening to hang the vice president if he did not overturn the election results. Conservative news media did not help. Newsmax, Fox News, OAN aired daily editorials by people such as Tucker Carlson. For a while, they supported the lies. They claimed the election was fraudulent, and most ended up having to concede that the election was not stolen because of lawsuits from voting machine manufacturers. But let's rewind. Let's go back to June of 2020. The world watched as a brave teenager held up her phone to capture the murder of a black man at the hands of police. The following inaction of lawmakers resulted in protests across the nation and the world. The world was now witness to the inherent racism that permeated society in the United States and across the globe. The murder of George Floyd, coming directly on the heels of the murder of Breonna Taylor, was the last straw. The social contract had been broken. What are people to do when they have no means of recourse, when they are being murdered in the streets for the color of their skin? There was a huge pushback against the protests, claiming they were riots and nothing more. This pushback came from Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and the conservative news media. They had chosen their side, the side of hatred. As protests spread across the United States, more and more people worried. Conservative media and the Republican Party at large continued their fear-mongering. Small-town newspapers that had been bought up by right-wing media companies started printing stories about riots. They even used pictures from riots in Spain in 2015 and tried to claim that it was here and now. Between the Republican Party and the conservative news media, fear began to grow in the small towns among the people. They worried that if any protests were to come to their town, their property, their homes, and even their families could be in danger. Many peaceful protests took place, including one in the small town of Bethel, Ohio. 80 Black Lives Matter protesters showed up to hold signs and walk up and down the streets. What they were met with was roughly 700 counter-protesters from other areas and states that had come in to incite violence. These included biker clubs and hate groups. Young girls were even attacked by these vicious individuals while the authorities stood by and looked the other way.
This is a motherfucking Republican state, bitch!
But not all small towns fell victim to this. In the town of Hillsboro, a mere 40 minutes away from Bethel, Ohio, a large group of Black Lives Matter protesters assembled. Over 300 activists and allies marched through the streets of Hillsboro. They stopped at the courthouse. They held speeches and protests there. Then they continued marching. By the time it was all done, the marchers had gone more than 3 miles, and the streets had been blocked off for them by police and emergency vehicles. The authorities did their jobs admirably. Nobody was arrested. There were no charges, and nothing was ever damaged. But that is not to say that hate did not exist that day. Individuals driving large pickup trucks flew Trump flags alongside Confederate flags, driving up and down the streets, trying to intimidate the protesters. This shows that it can be done. It's going to be a hard fight and a long road, but we cannot rest. Bigotry, racism, hatred, sexism, homophobia must all become a thing of the past if this country is to move forward.